All right. Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here for this conversation on diversity and inclusion. We had a great panel of people from a broad spectrum of life who have one thing in common, that's that we all love improv, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to take some time out today to talk specifically about inclusion in improv and how to create uh, access so that everyone can participate in the art form that we all love, and get some insight from these people about their experience, and then have some discussion about what we'd like to see more of or less of, or different in the inner improv communities. So this is going to be the first of many discussions. We're not going to solve anything, but we definitely want to start the discussion and hear from some of the experiences of people who are doing this all over. So we're going to start by having everybody introduce themselves. So I'm going to spotlight folks, and if you would just tell us a little about yourself and say hello.
Oh, hello, I'm first. I'm Stephen, he, him from London, UK, although not originally, as you can hear. I teach mostly independently through my own company, Impromiscuous. That's impromiscuous.com, me. I'm the author of two books about improv and inclusion, Play Like an Ally and Improvising Gender. And I work mostly in sort of LGBTQ inclusion and trans inclusion.
Very cool. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Ari, and I am an Indonesian living in Oslo, Norway, and I am a founder of an organization called Improv International, which is an organization for a lot of people, like a whole shitload of people playing improv. So it has been like 1,000 people from 50 different countries playing improv. Our goal is to be inclusive so that everyone has a chance to play on stage.
Very cool. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lakshmi. I'm from the Adamant Eves and Improv Comedy Bangalore. My pronouns are she, her. We improvise, usually long form, also short form sometimes. Since the online work began, thanks to Corona, we have been exploring ways to do improv online and to have everybody who's excited about improv, not under the umbrella of any specific brand or name, but just do it together, because India, as you know, is quite big, large. So it's good to be able to play with folks we would have to otherwise travel to play with. So, yeah, that's.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. I'm up. I'm Nikki. I live outside of Boston, Massachusetts, pronoun she. I am the artistic director and other things to do with the Vintage Improv Festival. Vintage improvisers being improvisers that we define as people 50 and over that are engaged in improv. And we just had our third festival. It was a virtual global online festival, but I would love to have people from more countries. We had people participate from Europe, small amounts. Next year, I think I just discovered a bunch of people that are going to help me get more 50 and overs involved in our festival. So glad to be here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. I'm Diana Brown. I'm from San Francisco, California, and I teach with Leela in San Francisco. I perform and teach with Binge Watch. We have a class called Improv Triage, and I'm an associate producer on Femprovisor Fest in San Francisco. My pronouns are she and her, and I am honored.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michelle Gilliam. She, her, and I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm also pretty connected to the Boston scene. I was there for a few years and absolutely loved it, but there's no scene without its issues, including mine. And that's one of the reasons that I'm super passionate about diversity and inclusion. There's so much work to be done, and it makes the world better when that work is done and we stay in that conversation. So yeah, Improv MKE is my company. We are only online right now, teaching classes and doing workshops and jams. So check us out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kieran. I'm from Nottingham in the UK. Pronouns are she, her. I've been improvising for about a year and a half now. Haven't written any books. I'm not a director of any company, but I'm super excited to be in this discussion. Yeah, just really honoured to be discussing this really important topic with everybody. Yeah, I perform with Miss Imp, so do check us out from Nottingham. And yeah, that's me. I'm just saying I'm really, yeah, really thrilled to be here and to discuss something that's so important. And I'm really happy that Zoom has been able to facilitate us being here and sharing all our stories with each other.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Aarti, she, her. I'm part of the Adamant Eves in Bangalore, India. We are India's first and only all-women improv ensemble. I'm also part of Improv Comedy Bangalore and very recently part of the Global Improv Project.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Ian. My pronouns are he, him. I am, for those who don't know, I am Vietnamese, but I live in the UK. My Vietnamese name for those who are interested is Nguyen Nhat Drung, which means he of the great scholarly nature. Just in case it ever comes up in any sort of conversation, just because it's nice to know that. I play with Comediations, which is the UK's first pan-Asian, pan-Asian group in the UK. I'm also very thankful to be in some groups. Some members of the panel here. I'm an independent sort of teacher and improviser, and my goal for the world is to get everyone of every type of description to have a show online, and because there's space for it, and I love the look of everyone's face. So, and also, just in case it comes up, I've also have long-term conditions of diabetes and ankylosing spondylitis. So I also have like medical issues as well. So I'm very open. I'm going to stop talking now.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lizzie. I'm usually perform in Manchester in the UK with a group called Thespionage Productions. We usually do monthly shows of short form improv. I'm also a host of the podcast Not All Men Improv with the female members of the Thespionage group. We are looking for guests to interview on our podcast. If you are part of the Women X community, we'd love to have you on. We'd love to hear your story. Yeah, it's been great to get to know lots of different women in the comedy community.
Thank you.
Who's that ugly feller? Hi, my name is Bill Barrent. I go by the name Rusty Bill. My location, my pronouns are he, him. My location is very near to Kansas City, Missouri. Make sure you have the Missouri on there, otherwise people think I'm in Kansas, Toto. I am blessed to be a member of the, let me see if I can get this right, Queen City Comedy, Global Improv Project, long form team. And I'm, other than that, not very special, except that at my advanced age, I have to be honest with you, since I was a young boy, I have never understood exclusion. So I'm very excited about participating here and trying to find some solution for inclusion, because I've always believed that was what it was supposed to be, inclusion.
Thank you.
It is I. Hi, I'm Rafi. From Tucson, Arizona, he, him pronouns. I coach and perform with the Tucson Improv Movement. I also run the improv program at the Arizona Theater Company. That's a teen program doing long form improv with people ages 13 to 19. I got my start with improv at a young age too. I started when I was 14, so I want to make sure that everyone at a young age like that gets into improv because it's super cool. I'm still 19, but still. And I also perform with the Global Improv Project, which is awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I was just reading a book about improv. I wasn't prepared for this. Hi, my name is David Escobedo. I run the Improv Boost. I've been doing improv since 1994, but I like to take this time to talk about other people's projects. If you get a chance to read this book by Amy Seaham, it's wonderful on the history of improv and BIPOC and women in improv. It's awesome. My friend Rich Baker has this book, Improv Made Easier. It's an awesome book. And lastly, one of my friends, Brenna Judikins, improviser, started her own Facebook page today. Go follow it. Brenna is amazing. And also, I'm a big fan of Improv MKE and also John Nguyen, improviser as well.
Very cool.
Hello, everybody. I already almost have tears in my eyes just over everyone's introduction. My name is Carla, and I'm with Queen City Comedy in Charlotte, North Carolina. I am super passionate about causes around improv and exclusion and inclusion and having conversations, because I think conversations change the world and us holding each other accountable. So that is me. Did we get everybody? Did we miss anybody?
I think so. And I'll add that we are here today because of Carla. This is her brainchild, and she's been the powerhouse that's coordinated everything and got everything running. Just about everybody here was selected by Carla because she's been involved and she's aware of who's out there and who's involved. So thank you, Carla, for putting all this together.
Thanks. I picked these folks because they're already doing some of this work. And so when we get to that part of the conversation, it's going to be fantastic to hear the work already happening and then the work we can continue to do.
Cool. So Carla, do you got a good warm up for us to get us, get our juices flowing?
Absolutely. So I thought we would start with just a little warm-up activity that's a visual activity for those of us on the panel as well as those watching. It's called Turn Your Camera On. So what I'll do is have everyone turn their camera off for right now, all of our participants in the panel, and I'm going to ask some questions. We'll start with some simple questions. And if this pertains to you, if this is something that is true to you or has happened to you, you will turn your camera on. I'm going to turn my camera off as well. And our first question is, turn your camera on if you are doing improv online currently. Ooh, fantastic. Great. You can turn your cameras off. Turn your camera on if you love doing virtual improv. Look at that. See, people, virtual improv is good. Great. Yes, and gallery view is going to be the best way to watch this for those of you guys. You guys can turn your cameras off. Our next question is, turn your camera on if you play on a team or coach a team that is a diverse team. Great. Fantastic. Good. Turn your camera on if you have had an improv teacher that is Black, Indigenous, or a person of color. Great, thank you. And turn them off. Turn your camera on if you were in a show that included a language other than English.
Bam, yeah.
Fantastic, you can turn your cameras off. Great. Turn your cameras on if you were in a show that had a sign language interpreter or captions. Great. Turn your camera on if you were in a show where performers couldn't perform due to a lack of physical accessibility.
Oh, dude.
Great. You guys can turn your cameras off. Turn your cameras on if you've been stereotyped on stage based on your appearance. Thank you. Turn your cameras on if you had to alter your culture or background in an attempt to get more stage time. Thank you. Turn your camera on if you have offended someone in an improv scene. Thank you. Right, you can turn your cameras off. Turn your cameras on if you didn't stop a scene, even though you felt uncomfortable or unsafe. Thank you. You can turn your cameras off. Turn your camera on if marketing for an event made you feel excluded.
These are fantastic. Oh my God.
Thank you, guys. You can turn them off. Turn your camera on if you asked for change or offered help around inclusion, but no change happened. Great. You guys can turn your cameras off. Turn your camera on if you have felt unsafe in a show, class, or jam. Thank you, guys can turn your cameras off. Turn your camera on if you have left an improv group or theater because of inclusion-related incidents. Thank you. You guys can turn your cameras off. Turn your camera on if you adjusted your own behavior to include communities or groups which may not have had a strong presence in improv. Thanks. You guys can turn your cameras off. And our last question is, turn your cameras on if you believe improv is for everyone. So audience who are watching, I hope you guys sort of paid attention to the number of screens that showed up with each question. It really is telling, I think, about the work we have to do. And our goal now is to start sharing some of our stories so that we can begin to work through and become a better improv community. So Kale, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Thank you, Carla. We definitely want to hear some of the experiences of the folks on a panel. If you're watching this live on Facebook, now would be a great time to share this. So if you want to start a watch party or share the link with anyone else, now would be a great time. And I forgot to mention up top that make sure you turn on your captions. This is being broadcast. And there are captions available for those that are hearing impaired, but you have to turn them on your end, on your Facebook as well. So I'd love to hear from some of the team, and we'll keep the conversation organic. Starting with times when we felt like improv and the organizations that we're part of fell short and you felt excluded. Are there some examples that you would be willing to share? I'd love to hear a little bit about times that you felt like you didn't belong or you were other within the improv community.
People don't feel uncomfortable going first. I'll start off and just do like a very small anecdote about this.
Go ahead,
okay.
David. Yeah.
So in my region, and currently I live in England, and it's funny because it's not like, there's a lot of times what I think the issue is when you try to apply a business model to improv, because improv is supposed to be support each other, yes, and you are enough, all these kind of things. But when it comes to like a business models like thrive on competition and trying to be the monopoly in the area. So in the region that I'm in, I had an issue with another improv leader who stole some of my ideas, who just asked me not to teach in the same region because it was a conflicted with their source of income or whatnot. And this is really harsh. Like, this is saying that, like, here I'm a person of color from another country, and that doesn't feel very welcoming at all. And this is, and here's the thing, is a lot of times I worked with like hate crimes and anti-discrimination stuff in Los Angeles. And a lot of times there's distancing language. People will never identify, I did this because of a racist reason. People will never say, oh, because racism is something other people do. It's not something that I contribute to or I participate with. So you have to understand that although your motives might not appear to be racist, the experience that we have, there's that theory called 1,000 tiny cuts, is actually very exhausting and very draining. So the situation not being feeling very welcomed is very tough, especially when you don't have the established network that other people in your region might have.
Thank you, David. Literally, I could have said all of those words. So the exact same thing happened to me, only this is my hometown. And they didn't say it out loud. So I literally have a friend a couple weeks ago, and this was something that was very hurtful to me, that questioned whether it was racism or sexism as to why the other theater like started to push me out. And it's very hard because I didn't have a company at the time. I was just, myself, an improviser in the community, a teacher in the community, all through that theater at the time. And then when they decided that they didn't want that, they didn't want me as a leader, that it was that competition mentality. It was so painful and so hurtful. And I would mention it to some of my friends that are not of color, and they would either literally pretend like I hadn't said anything and change the subject, or just kind of empathize. I had someone say to my face, yes, I know that they're doing this to you. I still want to play on their stages, so I'm not going to say anything.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah. So that's, and I'm still going through that right now. And it's so challenging because you have people that, the friend of mine said, because I'd asked him to teach for Improv MKE. And he said, he wrote me this long apologetic text after he had said no to me a couple months ago. He just didn't want to teach online. The other theater asked him to teach. And this is the language he used. He said, he's like, I'm really sorry. I just want to help. Anything that you need. He's like, I just feel like mommy and daddy got into a fight. That was such hurtful language to me. So I got, because I haven't been super specific online of some of the things that have happened to me, because I'm not trying to like drag anybody or, bad name, anyone or anything like that. Because they're still humans and everybody, has to work through things. And I have a lot of empathy for people. But I told him specifics. And so he kind of got it a little bit more. But yeah, thank you, David.
Thank you for sharing. How about others? Any other specific examples you'd like to share?
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Stephen. Oh, well, my example is being over 50 and beginning to take comedy classes at a theater and being one of maybe 2 in a group of 3 or 4 classes that were over 50, and seeing that number dwindle as each session went by, and bringing it up to theater and saying there's an issue with what we do with people over 50. And in this case, it's an unconscious bias. It's totally invisible. They denied that it was an issue, to the point where they said, we're not going to focus in our auditions on including people that are over 50, not, because we only do this on the basis of whether you're good enough, right? If you fit in. And I was thinking, but logic tells you that there has to have been at least one person over 50 in the last 10 years that auditioned and was as good as the 20-something that's been in one class of improv that you put on your team. So it was so hard to get them to see that this is a real issue, and sort of frustrating because it feels like you're invisible.
Stephen?
Yeah, I really hear that when we're talking about the lack of ability to have a conversation and to make people sort of understand what the problem is. I find that a lot with trans issues as well, just because it's a slightly smaller niche inclusion group, and people aren't really used to having to talk about it. Um, I could give you lots of examples, but one particular one that stands out, I was on a theater sports team, and there was a scene on stage that started from she had a penis as a joke, and then just about 3 minutes of worse. And because of the function, the structure of that kind of show, there were three judges who chose not to stop that scene. There was a debrief after where nobody brought it up. Um, I posted something in the Facebook group asking if we could have a chat, and friends private messaged me, but the director's only response was in the next rehearsal to sort of say a snippy little, if you have problems, talk to me directly. So I sent a long email saying specifically why all of that was wrong, and the response I got was, sorry you haven't enjoyed your time with us. So that's one of the groups slash theaters I've left. And I feel like, although that's quite a specific example, the lack of willingness to engage and have a difficult conversation is probably a theme that we might see again and again this evening, because I think if we're not able to have the conversation in the first place, then nothing is going to change.
Oh, that's harsh. Lizzie, can we hear from you?
Yeah, so my specific example is around feeling very objectified in a particular part. So I was cast in a play, and I was playing a sex worker, and I had to dance very provocatively as this character in front of one of the main characters. I was a closeted asexual at the time. I really was struggling to kind of identify with my own sexuality, and was kind of really struggling with a lot of issues around that. So I found it really difficult to act in a very sexy and a very convincing way as this character. And when I kind of brought this up to the director, that I was kind of struggling to really kind of take on this character, she kind of said something like, oh, well, just, just pretend it's your boyfriend and it'll be fine, like you can just pretend. And I'm like, well, I can pretend, I can act, but really I'm finding this very uncomfortable. So the thing that I did to try and kind of like force myself into being like sexy and like quasi heterosexual was to wear like a really skimpy red bra and pants, and kind of appear in the rehearsal in this kind of outfit to kind of force myself into this kind of, I can be like sexy and I can pretend to be like attracted to like people. But the fact was that I got more and more uncomfortable with doing this, that by the end, when I was on stage in the actual play, I was just dressed in like shorts and a like top, because I just really was not very comfortable with playing that part. So I guess I just felt quite dismissed by the director at the time. I didn't really feel like she was listening to what I was saying. This was quite a few years ago, so asexuality wasn't really a thing people knew of, but yeah, I certainly felt very kind of othered by that experience.
Thank you. Rafi?
Oh, I just wanted to talk about, me being excluded from my age in certain scenarios. I know the first time I ever took improv classes was a really special experience for me, and I really wanted to audition for the company. But that company, like a lot of others on the global spectrum, didn't allow for people under 18 to audition. And luckily, I found another in town that did. But I think it can be really important for people under 18 to find something like improv. I know for me during high school, it was the thing that really helped me emotionally just get grounded and really helped me make a lot of friends. And it can be a really special thing. So I know for me, being on a company was really cool. It helped me gain a lot of confidence. So I know that companies with age requirements like that always really bother me. And it's something that if it was in my power, I'd love to put a stop to. But yeah, that's my story. Is just I've seen that in a lot of other places too. I mean, I only turned 18 last year, so for me it was a lot of no throughout. Like when I'd go to another town and there was a workshop I'd want to take, it was a lot of sorry, you're under 18.
Thank you. Are there others that would like to share? Would like to hear anything that you're open to sharing? I think as I'm hearing all of this, I'm realizing I haven't heard anything yet that I would say there's no way that would happen at a theater that I'm a part of, that I've been involved in. There's nothing that I've heard that I can go, yeah, I can see that happening here as well. So that's a bit heavy. David?
So just to kind of expand on this concept of the experience from this perspective can be very exhausting. Is I've had ideas stolen before, and one of the I'll use names because I don't think these teams really exist anymore. I started a team in Los Angeles called Likeable, and Likeable was all about, at the time, this was 2014, 2013. It was about like social media was the format of the improv team, because it was, you know, you like stuff that was likable. And what I did to generate this team was I took all the people in the community that were doing ticket sales, tech booths, all the people in the community that helped run that company, that volunteered their time to make it work, because I figured that they're likable. They're the ones that are like, you see them every day when you walk through the door, and they're volunteering their time. They're contributing all their efforts to make sure that everyone has opportunities to perform. And it was diverse. It was a diverse cast. As I was going on, I found it hard to get any sort of stage time. It was hard for me to get any sort of booking slots. Maybe I got the cage match, but we didn't get any booking. And I'm like, these are people that are contributing to your company. Give them some stage time. Lo and behold, a year later, that same company developed a house team called Profiled. And Profiled was, you guessed it, a social media based improv team that were all the cliques, that were all the popular people within that company, because they loved that idea of a social media based improv team. They just didn't want to work with people that they felt were uncool. And it's like in the same company, and they're getting stage time and they're going forward. And it's like, it's not even subtle how you've just lifted that entire idea, like from me in the same organization. So it happens, like it sucks, and there's really nothing I can do about it. I have exercises I've developed been stolen, and in improv, I have this big like, oh, if it makes all improv better, that's great, that's wonderful. But I have an issue when it's like you take something from a person of color, BIPOC, and you put your signature on it, and you go, look at this idea that I came up with. I'm gonna start charging money for it. That's rough. That's tough. That is hard, especially when you're trying to establish yourself in an improv community.
Yeah.
It's so one of the aspects of this exclusion is it's heartbreaking to hear that the way you get better is to perform more and be excluded from the very things that give you the opportunity to perform more. So you begin to feel like you're worth less, that what you do is less, and you lose a sense of who you really are. And that's one of the things, like you can do things for yourself, like we created Vintage Improv to do that, but in a way, it's like if Vintage Improv wasn't necessary, that would be like the best way, because we should feel like we belong. We should have the opportunities, and to just be outright excluded and be told that you should be performing more to be better is just it makes people quit, actually.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I've heard some improvisers complain about improvising on Zoom, but for me, I only have positive associations with it, because for me, it's like opened up so many more opportunities. Like, you know, I mean, before Zoom, I'd be performing, you know, twice, maybe 3 times a month, but oftentimes once. With Zoom, I'm doing improv all the time, which is awesome, because, like, you know, it's opened up so many more opportunities now that improv has gone global. So I only have positive associations with online improv because of stuff Mickey was just saying. Like, I think it's really cool how much more often we get to perform now.
Good. John, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, this has sparked a memory of things I've not thought about for a long time. So this is like when I was a teenager. So we're talking the 90s, before I really knew what improv was. But this is not an improv story, but it's a theatre story, so I think it's appropriate. So Hamlet, those who know Hamlet, there's like a whole story of, like, you know, mother, father, all that sort of thing. And I campaigned in the school to play Laertes, Hamlet's rival. I really wanted to do it. I learned all the lines, and my friends were supporting me, like, doing this sort of thing. And I wasn't cast. I thought, fair enough, I wasn't cast. And I found out afterwards I wasn't cast because both the parents were played by white actors of Laertes. Polonius was played by a white character, his sister was white, and the director said, "We love you, John, but it won't make sense. The audience won't accept you as the son of a white person." and I helped coach the guy who did later. I learned all the lines, I learned all the moves and everything. I learned sword fighting for this part and everything to do it. And then I found out afterwards that it's because I wasn't white, so I could play. I could play characters who weren't related to anyone else in the play. So I ended up playing the players who turned up in Hamlet, and that was it. I couldn't play anyone else because everyone else had to be Danish and white in this production. And I appreciate this was the 90s, but still not an excuse at the time. And I didn't realize how much it affected me until years later. And I thought, why? Like, if you're basing your, and I'm not being arrogant. I was a very good actor. Like, you know, some of you work with me. I like to think I'm a pretty good actor. I know what I'm doing. I'm very dedicated. And I'd say it sounds incredibly arrogant. I appreciate that why I'm saying this out loud. But if you're basing if you are saying, if any improviser comes saying, we're based this entirely on your skill and not the way you look anyway, and that experience goes like, everyone in that company knew that I was incredibly dedicated. I learned the entire script for Godspell, like from scratch, so that I could I was there every day. I moved sets by myself. I could do everything. And that to find afterwards, because they want the audience, the director made that assumption that the audience wouldn't accept me. It would take them out of the play. And it's making me angry now thinking about it. And I feel like, but I hadn't thought about that memory until literally having the discussion. I've not thought about that for at least a decade, if not longer.
So let me pull on that a little bit, John. Why do you think that is? It sounds like it weighed on you heavier later than it did at the time. Is that accurate to say?
I mean, at the time, I make this joke a lot. I was 25% of ethnic diversity in my school growing up. Like, I grew up in a predominantly white area. My family were refugees from the Vietnamese War. We lived in that sort of thing. When my brother turned up, we were like half the school's ethnic diversity at that time. It probably wasn't that case, but that's a joke that I make because I didn't see many other people of my color in the village there at all. And I don't think I realized how much I had become white inside to get by at school. Because I loved martial art films. I loved eating weird food at home, but didn't endear me to anyone outside of my house. It didn't endear me to anyone outside because they just said, "No, John's weird. Come and do this. Come and smoke. Come do what we do. Do the normal things." Is the phrase I'm pretty sure I heard.
Jeez.
And I didn't realize how bad that was until I started going out and seeing people like in London and across the country going, that is not normal behavior, but that is what I grew up with and that is what I had to deal with. But no one told me different. My parents didn't know I was going through this because I didn't know how to explain it to them because they were refugees and they were told basically by the government, keep your head down. You're a guest in this country. Do not cause problems. That was basically the message they were given, effectively. And that leads to one of the biggest things I have a problem with not with improv or any industry is like, I know swathes of Vietnamese people in this country who have never integrated because they don't feel welcome to do so. And that's my big thing about improv as well. Like it's hard for someone to get integrated in stuff that they don't understand. And I think it's hard for people. It's just like I know Vietnamese people who don't speak English who've lived here for 20 years because they're afraid of making a wrong move. And that fear drives people away from, I think, from certain improv groups. Not along. So like, you know, I've spoken to my friend Davis about a lot. Like you see an improv post, you see people, you see a bunch of, and again, I don't want to say arrogant or rude, but a bunch of basically like men on these posters and that whole thing. They're going, why would I want to watch that? Why would I want to, what can I be involved in that? I don't think I can be. No, because I'm not seeing people like me. And I know that may sound horribly arrogant on my part to say that out loud, but for diversity to happen, we need to see people like us, to have our stories like us, open about it. And I feel like I've spoken a lot and I'm starting to tear up, so I'm going to end it there.
Absolutely. I think representation is very important. I saw Michelle and Kieran, but Ari, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I feel like I could segue very smoothly from John because I'm in a similar situation where I'm coming from another continent and I come to Norway and an expatriate, an immigrant. And we're talking right now about exclusion in the theater. But actually for immigrants like us, exclusion is basically life. And I want to actually use this improv in a more positive light, actually. That improv is a tool for us to be inclusive. So I'm talking about maybe the world outside is not ready to include us and then we had to change our ways. We had to do what is the culture surrounding us, and we have to adapt and forget about eating fermented fish and go for again Scandinavian fermented fish. So actually that's the same. um, I digress. But we had to change some of our cultures to adapt here. And then improv is actually a community where you can come in and still be yourself. So a lot of our community, our expatriates, they come in and they feel that they've never felt as home as it is inside an improv community. So improv can be better than life. That's what I want to say.
Yes, that's true.
It's a great point, and it hurts to hear, because I think of so many people that I've heard come to improv and stay because they say, I found my home, I found my tribe, I found people that are like me. And so my assumption is that everybody has that experience, and maybe they do, but at very different levels. It's hurtful to hear that that's not what everybody feels. Michelle?
Yeah, gosh, now there's like so much. I'll try to keep it brief.
Don't keep it brief. Don't keep it brief.
Yeah, don't keep it brief. This is your time.
I mean, this is also fascinating to me because, like, we love improv so much. We are so obsessed with it and passionate about it. And like, I was in the same market as Mickey. Mickey and I think Mickey's the only person I've met in person here. And no, from our market. And what she said is it makes so much sense. And obviously I was seeing it from a different perspective. I remember being in a 90-person meeting, being one of 2 Black people, and one of the people that was running our theater, same theater that Mickey was a part of, saying, if you are a person of color, they may have said Black, I don't know. It was one of those, you will feel tokenized. And I was like, did anybody else just hear? Like, I looked at the Black guy sitting next to me, and he was like, his eyes were forward. He's like, I want stage time, So I am not going to acknowledge that racist thing just happened, And like, like I said, I have empathy for everybody, a lot of people, right? But I'm just like, you can't say that. You can't do things like that. But okay, so my whole point was like, so we look at how we get people to stage. And like you were saying, Mickey, it's like, you need stage time to get better. But you're not getting stage time because the people that are looking at you don't see your value and don't feel your value. So then you don't get stage time. And then, and that happens over and over and over. And I think about like the journey of an improviser of color, right? Let's just say a Black improviser, right? They go to 101. And I've told this story many times before, but it's like, nobody's really checking for them. But they love improv. So they go to 201, right? Still nobody's checking for them. But they're loving it. They're having fun. They've had some experiences at this point where somebody comes on stage and does something that's inappropriate, but they're still like, oh, I'm still going to keep going. They go to 301. That's when it start to get like competitive, right? So really, your teachers aren't checking for you. People aren't checking for you at jams. They're like, oh, the Black person. They may even call you a different name. Like I was called in Boston. I was called a woman who is 13 years my junior, and we look literally nothing alike. Her name for the better part of a year. And
oh my God.
Oh yes. And when I was on Herald Night, I brought this up in our Slack, and this one guy who was a director was like, I mean, it doesn't really matter, does it? And I'm just like, oh, that's great. And anyway, so, and then you start to get into auditions and getting on a team and things like that, and people are still not checking for you. Most persons of color have left at this point, because it's not their community. So like, and they don't feel loved and they don't feel included. I was the second Black person who'd ever been on Herald Night. Improv Boston was, I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say names. This theater.
You're fine.
Okay, well, Improv Boston, I mean, they know it. They had been in existence for 35 years at that point. And I was the second person who had ever been on Herald Night. Second Black person. That is not okay. And these are still things that we're dealing with. And in order for, like, it's like we're not, and that's why I started off with, we love improv so much. All of us here right now in this room, we love improv so much. And it's not that we're trying to be negative. It's not that we're doing any of those things. We're calling out how we feel. How we feel should not be seen as negative. Like, it should be like welcomed and embraced and like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. Like, I'm really sorry. But okay, I'm done for now.
Thank you, Michelle. Kieran, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I do think that everybody has phrased it so much better than I could by this point. So there's lots of phrases that other people have used that I would probably like to use. But yeah, I just wanted to sort of pick up on, I guess what everybody was saying, but I guess particularly Mickey and David about it actually being exhausting, because it does sound exhausting that people people of varying humanities, varying qualities have to force almost a niche for them to do improv. And there would be, as Mickey said, there would be no need for vintage improv if, you know, women and men of whatever age could be included just in improv. And that goes the same for sort of every characteristic, every quality of human life that there is. And it just does sound incredibly exhausting. And what Ari was saying about sometimes improv is better than life. Well, yeah, because life is so exclusionary already for so many people. And improv, I think, can and should be at its best a place where everybody is included. So it is really sad and heartbreaking to hear that, you know, improv has a lot of work to do, like society as a whole, but it's really good that we are having these conversations about it. And obviously I do have positive experiences to share, but I reckon we're going to go on to be talking about that, so I'll probably wait to share those afterwards. But I just wanted to say, I relate to how exhausting it is to always be having to fight for your place, where a place should be already for everyone, because improv should have a place for everyone without us having to fight, really.
Yeah,
I agree, absolutely. And I think those micro inequities or micro devaluations, that's what adds up over time and causes that feeling of exhaustion. And I think to John's point, right, it's things that happened in the past that really don't start to weigh on you until you start to reflect on them. And especially when you start to see the patterns and things happen to other people as well. So, Rafi, I'll let you close out this question, but then I want to kind of take it and start looking at where things working well. Rafi, what would you like to add?
Michelle made me want to add when she was talking about at my company, I wish there were more improvisers of Latinx descent. I think I'm one of the only ones. There are probably about only 5 or 6 of us, but we're in the middle of Tucson, Arizona. You know, that's a city that's very predominantly Latinx, but the company itself is not. I don't know what the solution to that is. I'm also not in a leadership role enough to fix it, but it always really bothers me. I mean, again, Tucson is a city that's so, you know, and then improv here is the exact opposite, and I don't know how to fix that. Yeah.
No, that's a great point. It doesn't reflect the community that we're in. And so, I mean, thank you all for sharing that in such a public way. I really appreciate you being able to share your experience and helping us learn from what you've gone through. I'm sure you've had experiences too. You found places that were doing things and had best practices. Can you share what are some things that you think are doing well? Any specific examples of times that you felt included or that people were overt about the inclusion? Yeah, David?
I'll go first. Give people time to think about it. But like, I'm like doing, you do like short form like games, and you just throw out
Yeah.
you don't have a joke. But like, I'm gonna do this so my teammates, my
Take
backline
one
can-
for the team, David. Take
That's
one
right.
for the team.
So 185. No, just kidding. So I think one maneuver that happened really recently after like moving to England that made me feel really part of like the global improv community that's going on is after quarantine is that Jay Suko like does these 10 minutes with Jay, and he does them literally with everybody. He recently did it with someone who's never done improv before. He's done it with people that just started doing improv this year. Like he does, and Jay Suko's worked with like Stephen Colbert and Steve Carell and worked all over the place. And there was one time, like this is such, oh my God, I might start crying just because, the emotions are. But like, there was this one time that I was just messaging him and like, I have this idea. He's like, let's do it. He's like, let's just do it. And we went on the improv boost and it failed. The idea failed. I couldn't technically get it to work. But Jay was there and he was trying to sell it. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about improv. Blah, blah. And it's like, he just like dropped everything he was doing to be like, hey, let's try your idea. I'm down. Let's try it. We don't know if it's going to work or not. That's great. And to have that ability to have someone with like such a high tiers doing improv for so long to come to me like, yeah, let's do it. Come on, let's try it. Like that makes me feel like my ideas could be valid, that my ideas have value to them, and that you're willing to invest your platform to raise my visibility with your followers, all that kind of stuff, just to try it. Like that makes me feel very included.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great example of somebody who's doing great work. I'll add one too, Mickey. I know I'm thinking specifically of an older improviser in the community that I perform in, who has always been on the outside looking in. So always the person that can't quite make the team or doesn't fit in with the team, and has been involved in the Vintage Improv Festival. And his posts are so full of light and happiness, where he's found a place where he fits in and can participate. That's been great for me to see that it's not always like that. There is a space that he can feel like he can fully participate. So thank you for putting that together. Do you want to talk just briefly about why you felt why you pulled the Vintage Improv Festival together?
There's a whole group of very talented people with limited opportunity to perform, and a sense of community because everybody's spread out. So the festival is actually run by a nonprofit, and the goal is to foster community, have improv artists 50 and over play and learn together and then perform. So anything that promotes the idea of that community and including the audience is something that we really focus on. And so that's that. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, thank you. Great. Artie, do you have something you want to add?
Yes. So when improv became global and online, I had a lot of preconceived notions because I've only heard and learned about improv from shows and from people who are from the US and UK. And when it opened up, I initially I felt like I look different, I sound different, my references are different, the way I speak is different. I may not be included in a global community like this, or people might make fun of me or might mock me for not knowing certain references and certain, contexts that they set. But I have had some really great experiences where I did not feel excluded in most of the interactions that I've had in the global improv platform. And I've also felt that despite not knowing a lot of things and a lot of things that are their realities, I've still it still felt that they've been kind to me, and they've accepted, the fact that I come from a different space and I have a different history. So I really felt welcome in the at least the online improv community that's out there, despite being extremely scared. And I was petrified to even come on screen initially, because I felt that I may forget to speak English, and I've been speaking English my whole life, but I may just forget it. So yeah, those were the minutest problems that I had, but I'm so glad that they didn't come true.
Can I just say that would be so cool if that happened?
Great. John.
So I'm going to name drop. The first time I felt truly included in something was when I was cast by Stephen Davidson in the improvised play. Stephen was so encouraging of like, use your stuff, John. Use the things that you do to make your characters. He changed rehearsal so I could turn up, because I don't live near Stephen. Like he made sure that I felt like my voice was heard in every rehearsal, as it was not just mine, but everyone else. There were like a dozen of us, of all of us, and some of us are like, as Stephen says, trans. There's people from Europe, bisexual people, like non-neurotypicals, myself. Like, it's an incredibly diverse group of people, and it wasn't something Stephen set out to do, I don't think. It's just sort of like, these are the things that he saw in these people, like these unique things, that we aren't just the same typographical person that would do an improv show. And I think when I spoke to Stephen about this before, like how much I love the fact this cast is so diverse and that we're so great together, and we all bring something different. I've discussed this with many people in this panel before, like, if you end up with a cookie cutter improviser, that's just a cookie cutter show. That's not something anyone, well, people may want to watch it, but I don't want to watch it. I want to watch a show where there's one person who basically, and I don't swear often, so be prepared for this, where someone goes in and just fucks it up. Just someone who'll go in and do it. And there's someone who goes, puts the fires out, and there's someone who will do a funny accent, and someone who will dance, and someone, I want a show where you see all of those things. And Stephen did that for us. And he always says the smartest thing he did was cast his team. He always says that, and he will say that forever, and it was beautiful. And the fact is, he may not realize how often he does it, but every rehearsal is a case of do your own voice, do your own thing, and it will work, and it does. And so I feel like I'm embarrassing him a little bit by name dropping, but that is truly, honestly, the first time that I felt utterly like included, not just for being there, but also my ideas to be heard. And even if I didn't have any ideas at the time, Stephen would still ask me time after time again. So that was it. That was all I wanted to say.
Fantastic. Thank you. Rafi?
I talked about exclusion from my age before, but I also have to talk about being included, because that's been awesome. I know that for me, when I was I did take a 101 at a company when I was 14 as well, a bit later than the initial company I did, and that company did allow improvisers under 18 to audition for the company, so I did as soon as I could, and that became a really special space for me, because I know that I was always really nervous because of because of my age and being the only person in that space at that age. So at the end of every class, I'd always ask the instructor, "Hey, is it okay if I take the next class? Like, can I do that?" And they'd always say, "Yeah, what are you talking about? Why wouldn't you be able to do that? You're fine." For me, that became a really special space for me, because they never had any problem with someone under 18 taking a class. So I've definitely had a lot of cool inclusion experiences being under 18 too. I talked about running the teen program when I was in the theater company. They let me start running that when I was 16. It's evolved a lot, because now it's an actual teen long form team. They've got a show next week. You guys should check it out on my Instagram. But when it started, it was just a group of like 20 teenagers in a room doing short form games. So it's those have both been really special experiences.
Great, thank you. I'm glad to hear. Lizzie?
Yeah, so my story of inclusion is the group that I'm with now, Thespianage Productions. I joined them in January of this year. Previously, I'd had some really quite severe mental health issues in 2019. 2019 wasn't a great year for me. I quit my job due to mental health reasons, had a bit of a breakdown, and yeah, tried to kind of pick myself up in January of this year. And this group of wonderful people who I'd known since university kind of let me have a go at improv, despite the fact that I'd never got on stage before, hadn't acted in over a decade. They didn't care about that. They just kind of were wanting to include me in this beautiful group of crazy people, and it was just something that I'm not going to say that it cured my mental health issues, because it really didn't, but it gave me the confidence and the self-esteem that I'd been lacking for many, many years, just by the fact that they were like, yeah, of course you can come and like give it a go. Why wouldn't you be able to? And that meant so much to me, and has meant so much to me. And also they've kind of let me run with this crazy podcast idea. And really they put so much kind of trust and so much kind of power. They've given me so much power to kind of pursue my own thing within this group, despite being, you know, the newest member. And that's been so empowering and just so wonderful.
That's great. Diana?
Yeah, I first of all, I want to say I didn't mention one of the projects I'm part of, which is I'm part of the Global Improv Project on Improv Team Ridgely. So I love it's new, but I didn't do that when I introduced myself. It's such a privilege to be here with everybody. There have been times in my life where I didn't feel like I had a place. And I want to give a huge shout out to Leela in San Francisco, who has given me such opportunity on stage as a teacher, as a director, as a multicultural improviser, as a bisexual improviser, as a person over 50, being allowed to be on the leadership team, and to help be part of shaping that community. And that hasn't always been the case. I got into improv because I literally would go into castings and people would be like, well, you know, you're so talented, but we just don't know what to do with you. So I wouldn't get cast. So in improv, I can play everything from Ben Franklin to a can of soup. So I just want to shout out to improv in general, my community at Leela, and those who've given me opportunity.
I want to cut in and do a scene of a can of Ben Franklin soup.
Yes. Thank you.
Michelle?
Yes. So I'm going to also name drop. This person's not here, though. Will Loera, who is with the Florida Studio Theater. I believe that's the name of it. Was interim director many times, actually, at Improv Boston. And also he works with IA up in New York as well. But and it's so funny. Will and I have such a connection. People don't realize we've never met in person. I've never met Will. But he created a team called Bodega in Boston, and so he was gone. I came, and then I auditioned for this team. I was on that team, and it's a team of Black and brown improvisers, and I just felt like that was one of the first times in my life. Well, I mean, I felt this way a lot of times, but in improv, that a space was created for me before the space knew that I existed. And so that was such a beautiful and touching and amazing thing to me, that, you know, Will, at the time he created Bodega, he didn't know who I was. He didn't know that this Wisconsin girl was going to be in Boston for a few years and would need a place to be able to feel like she could breathe and improv in something that she loves so much. And I just am so thankful for that space. It really means a lot to me. So, and I'm still in touch with those improvisers. I had an hour-long conversation with Xian this morning on the phone while I was cooking breakfast. So, yeah.
Good. Thank you. Let's see. I'm looking for transparency in our chat. People have been raising their hand to go next. Ari?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to name drop Stephen Davidson to complete the pattern of 3. Because Stephen had a quote, "What is the best show ever is someone doing their first improv show ever." It has this kind of energy. So I've always done this show that's called plugging. I'm always doing a show of me and a complete newbie on stage. But it's always been like once a season or so. Suddenly you have this global Zoom thing. And then I'm starting to play with players in my theater that doesn't have enough stage and try to include them to bring them up. and then I start going a little bit around the map, like moving out, and then I realize like I'm starting to move out eastwards for whatever reason, and then I'm starting to play people with not the Norwegian culture which I'm usually playing with, but I'm moving towards Asia. And then I realized a lot of these connections suddenly hits, like all these things suddenly hit. I was playing specifically with Ankur Sardana in Delhi, and then we were doing a scene about thing, and then Ankur took up like an Indian mandala, and I haven't seen those in the years, and it really got me pumped up. Like, yeah, suddenly it got me really riled up. So in the beginning, I was trying to include young players from the East, and then I realized like what happens is me, the improviser, have been doing improv for a while, but Ari Witular, the person, has never really expressed their culture on stage. And now we're moving towards that. It is I who am being included in this global game.
Wow. It's fantastic. Wow. Great. Lakshmi. Oh, no, I'm sorry, David. Well, you know, I just said Lakshmi, so now Lakshmi did
Lakshmi,
David.
yeah.
Sorry.
Of course.
So I think I'm a bit picky about these for myself, about where I like to belong, because once I belong, I really belong. I like to give it all. Like if I get into a group, I really get into it in strange and very, very ways. So when I met the Adamant Eves, I was just getting out. I was in the last stages of getting out of a team where the leader was extremely insecure. He was an upper class man. He's one of my most important teachers to this date, but was just, man, like toxic, extremely toxic. And this was a team I'd played with for a long time. I had done all the free stuff, you know, like I'd learned from him, of course, and then helped him build this team up along with many, many other people who also quit together. And then I auditioned for the Adamant Eves. And suddenly I realized, and I've always known the importance of having an all-women space. I really like going to parlors. I don't care so much for threaded eyebrows as much as just this all-women energy that exists in beauty parlors, because it's different. You know, the conversations that happen there are not loose bathrooms, right? These are spaces which just come to be merely because of many other problems of gender binary, but these are spaces where the energy I had not seen anywhere else. And then I got into Adamant Eves, and suddenly I realized as a young artist, you want to give things to the team you belong, because you're feeling like, you know, they are doing you a favor by letting you be in it. And then you grow a little bit, and then you get into teams. And something that I've learned for myself is I need a solid footing in a team where I feel like I belong and I'm valued to be able to do any inclusion, diversity, or simple performative work. You know, because if I don't have that footing, at least for myself, even if that means me being a performer by myself, then any work that I'm doing is overextending myself in as many ways. And of course, also for me, it's important to work with a team. And this I've learned quite recently and quite strongly, that I find it difficult to work with a team which thinks it's doing enough, because there's no fucking way in hell anybody is fucking doing enough, because then we wouldn't be here, right? Like, so not us, just generally. So if a team is not, and that ties back to what, you know, Steven said, which is, if we are not ready to have a conversation about all the ways in which we are fucking up, then either we are blind, we are too complacent, or we don't care. We are here only for ourselves. So I've realized for me, like the big part is to find footing in a place which is okay with saying, we are doing this much and that's great, but we are not going to sit down and be like, oh, I'm so happy I tried this. And then like, if somebody else brings up, but this wasn't there. And that's always going to be the case. It's always going to be more work to do than the work that has been done, because that's the sort of diversity that exists in the world. And if we want to proudly say improv is as diverse as the world is, more than it being a mouthpiece to sell your art form, it's going to have to, one has to agree that we are always going to have to do a lot more than we have done. And what we have done, it doesn't take away from what we have done. That sort of insecurity is 2000. It's so 2000. Like to say I did 3 things and I should, everybody in the world should stand up for me. That's really old. So yeah, for me, I think being included was the adamant eaves. And it's the basis is a team, a person, especially an authority figure who's ready to say, I'm very proud of what my team has done, but I'm very aware of all the 2000 things which need to be done. And I'm not afraid. I'm scared because that's a long way, but I'm on it and I know it's long and hard work. So
thank you. Well said. I'm sorry, David, I skipped you.
No problem. I want to say that whenever Lakshmi cusses, I think an angel gets their wings. I love it. And I think John broke the seal. So she's like, I'm all in. We're just doing this.
It's my favorite thing. It's my absolute favorite thing when Lakshmi cusses.
I think the second thing is I want to drop Stephen Davidson's names because it seems like everybody else is. And I just want to be part of that crowd. Pattern recognition. The other thing is I want to talk about what Lizzie was talking about earlier, and I think it extends to what we were talking about, not being able to express our culture. So I'm doing my PhD in improv, so I'm actually studying improv and collaboration and emotions and all these kind of things. And I thought this quote that I read recently is really apropos. A Finnish nurse, Uni Lindstrom, said, "The inner longing of a human being is to be seen by another human being." So the quote is, the inner longing of a human being is to be seen by another human being. And I think that's why many times improv can feel therapeutic, because we're trained to listen as deeply as possible and support your idea, and to say, we're going to support that before we negate it. Our first response is not going to be like, there's no budget for that. Or our first response is not going to be like, well, here's why it won't work. Our first response is, tell me a little bit more about that. Let's add detail. I'm going to contribute to that idea. And so that's why I think when it comes to having to whitewash your culture, or like what John was talking about, how he felt like he was the weird person by eating different foods and watching different movies, it's because we're not being listened to. And that's the thing, is the inner longing of a human being is to be heard and to be listened for all our varieties, for all our idiosyncrasies. Recently, I posted a Facebook page, a post about group mind, and I said group mind, and I put a quote, and I said it can be considered very alienating, and someone posted in response something along the lines of, I cannot stand behind people who don't understand terms. And I felt like I've been doing improv since 1994. I'm going for my PhD. I've studied at all these schools. How dare you tell me I don't know, I don't understand this term? You don't think I don't understand this term? When I'm talking about the cultural ramifications of having group mind, it's not that I don't understand the concept, but to be told that by someone who owns a pretty prestigious theater in Los Angeles, I can imagine would shut down someone else who did not have the confidence or who did not have the experience. And to be told, hey, you can't contribute to improv is really hard for a person of color to hear. It's really tough to hear. And it's a microaggression. And I can have my opinion. I can say my stuff on my private page. But to be told, you don't understand the term, so I don't want to hear what you have to say. Maybe just don't comment.
Yeah.
Interesting, he came all the way to tell you that on your post. By the way, stand it, so I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to work with you. Oh.
Mickey?
Yeah, so this is a positive thing, and I love virtual improv. I absolutely adore it. It's not going to go away. It's too incorporating, and all boundaries are off. So even when we can get back together face to face, this will still exist for very good reasons. And in the trying to make our third festival happen, it became clear that people over 50, probably nobody, had any business traveling on airplanes to get to Boston in September. So in March, I started exploring how we could make the festival be virtual. What was a virtual festival? No idea. What I did is I started calling people. And what I learned is we can talk to people. You know, we shouldn't make assumptions about how important they are, how busy they are. You know, if we explain the reasons why we're coming to them, they often embrace, acknowledge, and help in my case, my vision grow. So I think for me, this is the lesson for me, is don't sell yourself short in terms of asking to have communication with other people and asking them to see improv or the world from your perspective and bring them on board. It takes a lot of time maybe, but it can have a huge impact.
Fantastic. Well, we've heard about experiences, good and bad. And the time we have left, I want to talk a little bit about solutions and actions. Obviously, that's a whole separate session that we could have because part of the issue is we talk about this issue quite a bit, and it just becomes talk. I think people are looking for movement and action. So let's start there. Carla, there's a couple.
Yeah, we have two questions from the audience that I thought were great for the panel to start with. The first question was around physical accessibility, especially for performers who are in wheelchairs or perhaps limited sighting, and what theaters and companies are doing to make that better, or what things that we might need to make that better. And I think Kieran said she could speak to that for us to get started.
Yes, so one thing I did forget to mention in the intro was that I actually do have a physical disability. So I have cerebral palsy, which means that well, for me, it means that I'm in a permanent wheelchair user. So yeah, so I think I'll talk about what I think we could do better first, and then there are definitely some positives. I think practically, it is about making sure venues are accessible first and foremost, and that's like a really huge practical thing. I mean, I have a very positive experience of being very included. I felt very included in my group Miss Imp in Nottingham. The main barrier for me has been that it's really hard to get venue space, and it's really hard to get accessible venue space. And I know that my people in Miss Imp are so sad when they can't get an accessible venue. And I know they try their absolute hardest. So I think that is a huge thing, just making sure that venues are accessible. And so that's a really huge thing. And I guess it's about having the support of people around you, whether they have a disability or not, to fight that battle with you, because it can be quite exhausting to be the only one who's saying, yeah, I need to have an accessible venue. And I know for me in the past, because I don't like making a scene. Apart from improv scenes, I love making those, but in general, I don't like making a scene. So, and I don't like to make people feel awkward. So I've often I've pretended that things are okay and that things are fine, and I've genuinely felt like they were fine. But it's like John was saying, that kind of weighs upon you later, that there's opportunities that you've missed out on. So I think, yeah, the venue thing is a huge thing. Positively, this isn't positively about improv in general. I think it is an amazing, like, I've never felt freer than I do when I'm performing improv, and I think that's amazing. And I think one of the principles of improv is you are enough as you are, and I really do feel like that when I'm performing. Well, I'm actually lucky to say that I feel like that most of the time in improv, and I know that I'm appreciated for all of my other gifts as a person and as a performer, and obviously my disability is part of that, but I know that it takes its rightful place as part of me, but it doesn't dwarf me, because there's so much else to me. And I really love the fact that improv can do that. And also, I think was it Lakshmi was talking about sort of feeling you really need the support and trust of the people around you to sort of try out new things. And I'm obviously very lucky that I have felt so supported by my improv team as well. And we've done workshops where the workshop was in the round, so I don't tend to sort of move a lot when I'm doing an improv scene, just because movement isn't something that I really think about. I just think of myself as a stationary sort of performer, but I sort of realized that I was in a wheelchair, and I did have the benefit of electrical power behind me. And I remember doing this in the round workshop, and I realized that I could sort of move around and incorporate that movement in my performance. And I don't think I would have been able to try that if it had not been for feeling comfortable and safe with everybody around me. So I think, yeah, that is the positive in what improv can and should be and is for me, which is really lovely.
That's great to hear. Thank you for sharing that, Kieran. And I think that's the goal. The hard part is what is that? What's one thing I can do right now to make someone feel more comfortable and more that they can be themselves? And I don't know what the answer is. I think that's what I'd love to hear more of. Like, what are those steps that we can start to take to make everybody feel more included and give them access?
Bill has his hand up.
Yeah, Bill.
Again, from my perspective, I grew up in a very diverse family. We were taught that if somebody else came up to me, and I was chubby as a kid, so I was taught that when somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, fatso, what are you doing?" or "Tubblard" or anything like that, my mom told me, consider the source. They said, what is that person thinking? Why would they possibly want to call you that name? Why would they want to hurt you? Can you find out? And so the next time a kid came up and called me fatso, I said, well, in a perfectly normal, unaggravated voice, I just said, why do you call me fatso? And he's like, because you're fat. And I said, I know that, but I'm trying to lose weight. Anyway, we got to talking for a while, and it turned out that I had an abusive father. He decided to get rid of his anger by projecting it onto me. And I said, look, buddy, anytime you need to talk, and I was a kid, anytime you need to talk, come talk to me. If your father is being a jerk, come to my place. And we became great friends. I see so many people expecting someone like me to reach their hand out like that. And we do. There are other people like me, and we reach our hands out, but we only have so many hands. So I think that if you want to make inclusivity work, you have to understand that the person you're trying to include has certain needs, but the person who's being included also needs to know that the includer has certain needs. And you got to work together. It's one of these things. It's not a side-by-side. It's not a, oh, come on over. Okay. Here we go. Yeah, okay. No, it's meeting and integrating. And I find that the improv community as a whole, since I've started doing it since spring of this year, the improv community is inclusive. But I also know some people who claim that they weren't included for certain reasons, and they're using some excuse. I mean, I hate to put it this way. I don't want to start a civil war here, but they're saying, for instance, like, oh, well, I was too old for them, or well, I was too young for them. Common excuses that have been used, but the wrong person is saying it. The improv group is going, we don't care what age you are. We don't care what color skin you are. You need to take a basic course before you come in here. And the person on the outside is going, well, there's got to be other reasons. I've taken an improv course. Take another one, and then try again. And if you don't get included, then complain. Then say, look, I did exactly what you asked. Now what's your problem? Anyway, I could ramble on for hours. I was brought up in a different atmosphere. My parents were very supportive. My family was very diverse, and people don't understand this. I'm talking about people who married into my family. And in my case, that was, you are accepted now as a blood relative. So when I tell you I have a Jamaican uncle, he's not a blood relative, but he married into the family and he became blood. My Japanese aunt, same way. My Jewish uncle, my German stepfather, they all became family, and we accepted them, and it was almost like no questions asked. Sure, they did things wrong, but that's part of inclusion. You got to work with the person. You can't just say, yeah, come on, stand next to me, just don't look at me. You can't do that. You've got to bring them into your heart. And I see the improv community as a whole doing that online. You know, we've heard a lot of terrible stories about real life. And I didn't say anything. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. I hate to say it, but the crowd in Kansas City that does improv tends to be a little cliquish. And I didn't click with their click. You know what I think? Okay, cool. I'm not going to complain to them and say, you guys need to change your ways. I'm going to say to me, okay, well, what part of the click, can I mesh with, if any? And I have some friends that do improv, and we get along fine. It's just that there are others that don't. So there's no skin off my nose. I got you guys.
Thank you. I want to give folks a chance to respond to that. Kieran, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, I did, but I don't mind if Michelle or Lakshmi want to respond to that first.
Okay, good. Michelle?
Either.
Okay, I don't know where to start. I'll just go back to what David was saying at the beginning. People don't always say, hey, I'm excluding you because you're Black or because you're a woman or because you're Asian. It happens in other ways. You're not a good fit. What am I going to do with you? I've had friends that have been told don't be Black on stage. So don't be, let's say you're told don't be Black on stage. What do? Go away, come back, not be Black. You can't do it. I don't know where to start or where to begin. It's very nice to say, like, turn the other cheek, or maybe that's not the reason. Unfortunately, we have so much ample evidence in life that says this is what's happening. And I think it almost gets, I don't want to say worse, but worse when you do improv, because as you have been doing it for so long, over 20 years, like myself, your instincts are even more sharpened. You hear what people say, you hear what they don't say, you feel it, you know what's happening. You can tell when someone's character is lying on stage. So like, you can tell it in real life too, or when they can't, and sometimes people don't even know why they're doing it or excluding you either. It's just a part of who they are. So I love that we are here in this conversation, but if we want to talk about solutions, the people who hold the power have to be willing. And someone said it earlier, and I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly who, but like, it might've been Lakshmi, like, it's fine if you put up, oh, we're inclusive, or it's fine if we put this in words, but you actually have to put the actions behind it. You have to be open, willing, honest, to listen, and to be, to both be heard and be listened. I got too much. I'm sorry. I'm bubbling. I'll stop talking now.
No, thank you. Lakshmi?
Like a couple of concepts that are coming up for me is one, of course, who is expected to do the labor. Because everything is labor. Like we sitting here, doing this conversation is labor. And historically and sociopolitically and economically, the dynamics exist because a community or a group of communities have done the labor for far too long. So already, and also again in the conversation of diversity and inclusion, it is the community which is affected, which is again asked to give the solutions. And that's okay. Let's say, okay, we are going all that way and doing that, right? And then when it's presented, it's then sometimes too soon. You can't expect so much change so early on, or be real, be practical about what change can happen. But if we are thinking about diversity and inclusion, why the hell not be absolutely ideal? I mean, we do scenes where we are turtles in the sky. I'm sorry, is diversity and inclusion too much to ask for? Because I thought we were doing improv and there was like really no limit, right? So that was one thing, who is asked to do the labor. And this looks very different in different places. And are they being paid to do this labor? Because this labor is only symptomatic of the historical labor that group has done for like their lifetime, right? And then, of course, the second thing is this thing that I really learned very recently and I really enjoy using, which is spiritual gaslighting, which is this whole idea of, and I'm a big believer in universe and cosmos and those things, right? But when suddenly I'm sharing that, this shit happened and somebody's like, yeah, that's part of you. You're seeing you in that. And I'm like, no, I'm not, dude. I think that person was a jerk. So like, the usage of these concepts that we have, and I must say, has some history in spiritualizing colonized colonized communities, and then you just take this away and do yoga practices. I have anyway. So you take this and suddenly there are these bastardized versions of that to really talk against the actual work that needs to be done, and which is difficult. Again, I want to say it again, I will. It is difficult, it is long, there are going to be more failures, and if one is going to wake up feeling like I'm too afraid to make a mistake, it's probably not going to happen, right? Like, at least for me, I feel like, because okay, last thing I'll say, there are a lot of caste conversations that are happening in India, right? And I'm from a very privileged position in caste. And we don't even know where to begin that. I'm not even going to come to improv because the representation is zilch. It's not just poor, it's zilch. But when I sometimes talk about these conversations, suddenly I'm very, very aware of the fact that I'm speaking from a long list of privileges than non-privileges. My list of not being privileged is much shorter than the privileges that I have. And then if I'm going to just be so scared of saying anything, of being called out, because I should rightfully be called out because I'm speaking from a particular, dominant, whatever part of society, then I'll never be able to do anything. So part of me has to be okay with the fact that tomorrow I'm going to be called out for speaking from my privilege, and be okay with that and see what work I can then do, right? As opposed to not say anything or ask people who have done the work for these many years to do the work again. So yeah, I think it's uncool.
Very cool. Kieran?
Yeah, I think I'm going to change my comment again because I keep changing my comment after everybody speaks. But yeah, I think what's coming through is that we really need to be, improv as a community needs to not be scared about knowing that this work needs to be done. And my background is in psychology, and we're sort of tackling a similar things in psychology, sort of aligned with the Black Lives Matter movement, and we really have to think as a profession about where we have been racist as a profession. And yeah, so from being part of those discussions, yeah, it's really, it's scary and uncomfortable to think that, something that we love, improv and psychology for me, have issues. But we really need to get used to being uncomfortable and all reflect on what we can do, because we've also spoken about how great improv can be and is, at least some of the time, and that's that's what we can aim for. But it needs to we need to get used to being uncomfortable and questioning ourselves and questioning all our own biases. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's this work is 100% personal work first, I think, before we can start dismantling systems or even analyzing systems. It's personal work first. Diana, I'm going to give you the final comment of the session, and then we'll.
I think we had Stephen Davidson was supposed to speak as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, Stephen. I'm going to give Stephen. What I meant to say was give Stephen and then Diana the final comments.
I'll try to keep it really brief.
No, go ahead.
So I talk to a lot of people all around the world about diversity and inclusion, and two big difficulties often come up when I'm talking to people who are in a position of privilege. The first one is the difficulty with taking things personally. So I think if we start discussions from a point of, I am definitely not sexist, racist, homophobic, it can be really difficult to engage. And even if you're sure that you're not, I think we need to acknowledge that the world people are coming to our classes from is, and that we therefore need to be engaged in that conversation. And if you notice a resistance in yourself to engage in that conversation, that's probably a really good starting point for some self-reflection. What's that uncomfortableness there for you? And I think the second thing that is really difficult to explain if you're in a position of privilege is the impact that being part of a cultural majority has. Something that I found works beautifully for inclusivity and diversity is groups where the critical mass of people is shifted rather than just including one or two members of a minority. So all queer groups, all female groups, all POC groups, all over 50 groups, etc. Because it changes what that group mind that David was talking about can be. And I think, well, so John mentioned the improvised play, and that group has one cishet white guy in it, and he's lovely. But if there were two of him, it would be a problem, because the mind takes so little to just all shift towards that dominant culture that no matter how lovely those people are, it takes very few of them to become a mental and emotional majority in the room if they're also the cultural majority in the place where you are. So that's the thing that I noticed. Okay, I'm done.
Well said. Thank you.
Love it.
Diana?
Microphone turned on. Thank you so much. And I'm going to be brief. I was starting out to say something else, but I want to really just applaud what Stefan just said. I have a lot of privilege in my life, and I also have a lot of things that I've worked to overcome. And thank you just for reminding me to look at myself. And when I think I've got it, and I think I know, and I think I'm on the right track, I need to step back and remind myself that I'm not walking in somebody else's shoes. So that's all I want to say. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. I think we could go for hours more, and I hope this is the first of many conversations we have. Carla, I'm going to turn over to you for final thoughts.
Sure. First of all, thank you to all of those on the panel for having open and honest discussions. This is not an easy topic to share, and we don't always agree with each other, but I think listening and hearing are the first steps for us to move forward. And this is our first conversation. Hopefully this will be a conversation of many. Those of you guys watching out there, first of all, thank you. And we have a beautiful comment section going in this video, and this can be an ongoing conversation that should be happening. We shouldn't wait for the next conversation. So answer those, panelists, please jump out there, answer those questions. People are answering the questions for each other. They're looking for tools, they're looking for resources. And our goal is to continue working together to identify some of those tools, identify some of those resources, and some of those organizations that are making change, and then begin to maybe model some of those into our worlds as well. So this was wonderful. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you all sharing your time, your stories, and we've just hit a little tip of the iceberg here, and we have so much more to work on. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And we are whatever the opposite of live is. We are no longer live.